For our research, we looked at dialogic reading effects on early literacy skills in preschool students from low-income backgrounds. Our group consists of myself, Mackenzie Anderson, Caitlin Eby, Haley Sawyer, and Molly Winter. Starting out with some background information, economic status is directly correlated to a child's literacy skills. In fact, children from lower income homes are at higher risk for deficits in early literacy skills. As a group, they often have limited access to books, less one-on-one reading, and family involvement. Dialogic reading is defined by Whitehurst as the adult helps the child become the teller of the story. The adult becomes the listener, the questioner, and the audience for the child. No one can learn to play the piano just by listening to someone else play. Likewise, no one can learn to read just by listening to someone else read. Children learn from most books when they are actively involved. Dialogic reading is defined as being interactive and child-centered as opposed to parent-centered and passive listening. Dialogic reading allows for children to engage in a conversation about the text they are reading. It strengthens a child's engagement and participation with a story through enjoyable interactions with adults. Dialogic reading is commonly implemented using the PEER acronym. PEER is a sequencing technique used by the parent and/or teacher, including the following sequence. A, prompts the child to say something about the text. B, evaluates the response. C, expands on the child's answer by rephrasing it or adding information. And D, repeats the prompts to see if the child has learned from the expansion. The purpose of this systematic review is to address the following question. How does implementing dialogic reading in low-income students affect their literacy development? Throughout the review, two main topics are discussed: placement of implementation and length of program.
Now let's discuss the methods section. There were 3 electronic databases searched for this study. There were 2 separate searches conducted. The first search resulted in 48 total studies, and the second search resulted in 23 total studies. To establish reliability, 2 reviewers independently reviewed each article based on the title, abstract, and full text. Disagreements between reviewers were resolved through consensus at each step before continuing on to the next. Of the 71 originally included articles, 6 peer-reviewed articles met the inclusion and exclusion criteria. To be included in the review, a study had to meet the following criteria. 1, implemented a dialogic reading intervention to improve literacy. 2, included participants from low-income backgrounds. 3, participants between the ages of 0 months and 5 years. 4, the participants followed typical development and did not have any developmental or intellectual disabilities. 5, included participants who were not characterized as bilingual. 6, included participants whose hearing was within normal limits. And 7, was published between 1990 and August 2020. Based on Robbie's level of evidence, there were 3 Level 1 articles included. Level 1 is well-designed, randomized controlled trials. There were 3 studies qualified as Level 2. These are defined as well-designed, non-randomized control trials. The 6 included articles were reviewed and appraised for levels of evidence and literacy outcomes. The framework from Salkind was used to assess study design quality through the appraisal of the following items: clearly stated objectives, thorough literature review, suitable methods, adequate detail to allow replication, reliability measures, appropriate sample size, clear and complete results, and the ability to be generalized. The following scores are on a rating scale of 1, poor, 2, adequate, and 3, excellent.
In the results section of our paper, the following variables were considered: the placement of implementation, including Head Start locations, public pre-K programs, social service organizations, school and classroom, and in the child's home. The other variable considered was the length of study, ranging from 4 weeks to 47 weeks. 2 studies addressed dialogic reading in home-based settings. These 2 studies had different care providers implement the dialogic reading strategies. One study observed the relationship between one-on-one dialogic training. 3 studies addressed implementing dialogic reading strategies in Head Start daycare programs. These studies required the parent and a researcher or teacher to implement dialogic reading. All articles showed a significant improvement in emergent literacy skills. Conditions were assigned for one study conducted by Whitehurst and colleagues. Children were randomly assigned to classrooms with the conditions of reading only at school, school reading plus home reading, and a control group that had an activity and attention control. Positive changes in student emergent literacy skills were maintained for all studies addressing language improvement associated with dialogic reading implementation in preschoolers from low-income backgrounds. Positive outcomes were seen for all variations of the dialogic reading program, including different placements of implementation and different caregivers implementing the program. Parents who used dialogic reading with an enhanced ebook talked with their children about 3 times more than parents using the unmodified ebook. Significant improvements in literacy were found for the length of time children spent attending to books, letter knowledge, oral comprehension and vocabulary, and reading frequency.
Moving on to the discussion section of our paper, implications are as follows. Speech-language pathologists can educate caretakers on dialogic reading and the benefits children can gain from it. Caretakers can receive support through videotaped training methods, ebook applications, etc. The versatility of dialogic reading provides diversity of implementation, whether in school, home, or clinic. As for limitations, more current and up-to-date research should be conducted to benefit students in current learning environments. The dialogic reading programs could be updated to meet the modern resources and needs of children and families from low-income backgrounds. Limitations included placement of implementation, completion rate, individual implementing interventions, and tracking impact of interventions. No studies investigated the effectiveness of 2 different lengths of intervention, which would have provided valuable comparison information. Further research is needed to determine the future direction of implementation of dialogic reading for children from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Furthermore, more research investigating the long-term effects of dialogic reading skills into grade school is also needed. In conclusion, children from low socioeconomic backgrounds are at a higher risk for deficits in early literacy skills as a natural consequence of limited access to books, lack of exposure to rich language, less one-on-one reading, and lack of family involvement. Our research findings suggest that dialogic reading interventions were effective in improving early literacy skills in children from low socioeconomic backgrounds. All studies proved to be effective regardless of variables such as placement of implementation, length of study, and individual implementing interventions. Training parents, caregivers, or teachers on effective ways to implement dialogic reading strategies at home and/or at school holds promise in helping children gain the skills needed to promote deep thinking and a rich use of language. We appreciate everyone taking the time to review our poster and video. If you have any questions about our review, please feel free to leave questions.